better late than never. Here's a quick demo on how I tie my live bait dongle. What is a live bait dongle? Well, a live bait rig isn't necessarily a rig that you put a live bait onto a large hook and cast it back out. You can, of course, do that. Small pouting and whiting, things like that, make great bass and cod baits. The downside to hooking a live bait and casting it is quite often it could come off on the cast, or the fish doesn't survive the cast and you're actually not fishing a live bait at all. With this setup, what we actually do is we just put a very small amount of fish, like a little strip of mackerel, or a bit of worm, or a bit of squid, whatever you fancy actually, onto a small little hook mounted just behind a great big hook. Okay, and the idea is quite simple. You catch a small bait fish on there, let's say a little pouting, and once that's hooked, you then leave that rig out there, and then obviously Mr. Big Bass comes along, swallows the whole lot, and you've caught him as well. Nice thing about that is you can fish that at any range. So if you wanted to fish a live bait at 100 yards or however far you can cast, you can do it with this setup, whereas you can't really cast a live bait that far. That's a very simple way of doing it, by the way. That's a simple notchless knot, hair-rigged small hook on the back of a large circle hook, basically. That's one simple way of doing it. What I'd like to show you, though, is something a little bit tarty. You know me, I like to do things a little bit different. And I've come up with this little dongle, a live bait dongle. Quite simple, so if anybody's ever fished a dongle before, will know exactly what I'm going to do. So you guys can now leave the room and go and do it. But if you don't know what a dongle is, let's have a little play at this, shall we? A couple of reasons why I like this compared to that setup. First of all, I actually use a short section of tubing on the dongle, which helps keep it rigid and straight and stops tangles. That hook can't sort of double back on itself or anything like that. So it's a good anti-tangle. And you can also, nice thing about a dongle, is I can hook that onto any hook. So if I've got an existing rig, or whatever the rig is, I can just simply hook one on and then it becomes a live bait rig. You don't necessarily have to tie any specific rigs for it. Right, let's have a little look, see how we tie this. Let's have a look at the components, shall we? So the actual dongle itself, ever so easy, 3 components. A small hook, which is our little bait hook. I like to use a size 2 wormer. I've got some Yuki AX63s here, but any size 2 wormer will do. It could be the Sasamis, there's some great Tronics worms, I've got all sorts in my box over there. So a size 2 wormer hook. I like a little short shank wormer, because 9 times out of 10 I'm just putting a little tiny little bit of mackerel on, the little sort of thumbnail size bit of mackerel. Something like that, a little pouting is going to swallow nicely. And you always get really good hookups on wormers. For the dongle part itself, I'm actually using some fly backing line. Okay, now it's important that you use some kind of braided line. That'll become clearer later on once we've got towards the end of the video. So some kind of braided line, it needs to be sort of reasonably thick. So if you're using normal braid, I don't know, like a spider wire whiplash or whatever you guys have got, I would suggest probably something 60-ish pound. You probably get away with a 40, you could probably get away with a little bit more. But some kind of braided line. And last but not least, I use a bit of 1mm Tronics Pro Lumi tubing. That goes over the braided line. Right, now let's zoom in and get this made. First things first, and this is the first tricky part, is to thread the braid through the eye of that small hook. Now that's not going to be the easiest thing. I could spend the next 3 hours trying to pull various strands of braid through there. So if you're struggling to do that, a simple little trick is to get some very, very thin bit of mono. You may not even be able to see this on the camera. My apologies if you can't. This is a bit of 018, but anything you've got kicking around really. Thread it through the eye of our hook, and turn it back around and thread it back through. Again, so what I've got there is a loop of thin line through the eye of my hook. Get your braided line, tuck it just into that loop, pull loop. And what's going to happen is I pull the loop through the eye of my hook, that braid's going to get pulled through with it. There you go. So that's nice and simple. I'm going to attach that hook with a very simple 3-turn half blood knot. So 3 times around, back through the loop. Give that a bit of a pull down. Simple so far. Trim that tag like so. Don't worry about the fluffy bit. Cut your braid longer than we're going to need, because in a minute when we tie a knot in it, you're going to need a bit of working space, okay? And that's that bit done. Right, next bit is our loomy tubing. I'm going to just cut a 2 centimetre, that is all, piece of loomy tubing. By all means at this stage, feel free to experiment with different length dongles. You know, you might want to try it short, you might want to try longer. Like with anything in fishing, try things, experiment. It's all part of the fun of it. Right, I'm now going to thread my braid through the middle of that tubing. Again, that is not going to be easy with a frayed end, so I'm just going to use our little loop of mono trick again. So thread it through, and thread it through, like so. So I've got a loop going through our tubing, tuck the braid in, and through she comes. There we go. So a bit of tubing on our braid. I'm going to just push that tubing over the eye of my hook, just a few mil. And what I'm going to do back here is I'm going to tie just a double overhand loop, okay? So make a loop and go through twice. Is it? There we go. Okay. Now as you're pulling this down, try and pull it down so it's close to that tubing. So just sort of keep eking it down, eking it down, eking it down like so. There we go. I probably could have done that a little bit closer actually. So we've got a small gap in between the tubing and the knot. So when I pull that tubing back off the hook, we've got something like that. Trim just behind that double loop, double knot, say. And there we go. That is done. That is my live bait dongle. Really simple. Now, as I said earlier, the reason why we use braid is how we attach this to this. I'm actually going to hook my big circle here through the middle of the braid, okay? So at this point, try and sort of open up the braid a little bit, sort of push it together, and try and hook it as centrally through those strands of braid as you can. And that's all we're doing, we're just passing the hook through the braid, like so. And that is it, that is done. So I can pull that, give that a good pull, that doesn't come off, because that knot, that double overhand knot that we tied, stops that hook pulling through the braid. And that is done. Quick and simple and easy as that.